Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for What's New, What's Next, our Veranda panel, where we are here to celebrate our new book, Veranda Elements of Beauty, The Art of Decorating. I think I have to cover my face to show you guys the book. We're thrilled to be here today to give you a sneak preview of the book, and I'm so excited that I have three amazing designers, all of whom are featured in the book, here to help me celebrate its unveiling. But before we dive into that, I want to take a minute to thank our amazing host, the New York Design Center, and Jim Druckman for putting together this month-long What's New, What's Next. And I also want to thank our sponsor today, Circa Lighting. We absolutely love Circa, and we're thrilled to get to partner with them on this event. One of the amazing things that Circa is doing today is providing the first 75 people who registered for the panel to attend the webinar today with a complimentary copy of the book. So thank you so much to Circa for helping us launch our new book. I'm going to show it one more time at the risk of making myself disappear into my background. I don't even know if you can hold it back here. The book is available on October 20th. But you can pre-order it now, and you can find out how to purchase the book at veranda.com, and of course, as well as on Amazon. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists today. I'm just so pleased to have them here with me to help celebrate the book. And first up, we have Suzanne Castler. She's an Atlanta-based designer known for her livable elegance and her sophisticated simplicity. She has a number of collaborations in the works, including one with Visual Comfort, and of course her line at Hickory Chair, Lee Joffa, Ballard Designs, and La Cornue, one of my personal favorites. I'm also very pleased to have with us today Randy Powers. He's a Houston-based designer known for infusing classical interiors with a cosmopolitan beat. And he has collaborations with Circa Lighting as well as also Hartman and Forbes. And finally, last but not least, we have Thomas O'Brien today, a New York-based designer and president of Aero Studios, his design and home furnishings firm. Thomas's work is characterized by a really warm and livable sense of modernism. There's a great sense of balance to Thomas's work between refined and rustic, and comfort and rarity. And he has his own line of furnishings available through Aero, as well as his collection with Century. And I just want to say at the outset, one of the characteristics that you probably heard me say in introducing each of our panelists is that while of course they have done projects all over the world and they're known for their extreme high end and sense of luxury, all three have their own unique sense of livability when it comes to their work. And I think that's what's really at play in our discussion today and in our book. So each panelist today is going to share a project that he or she has done, some of which is featured in the book. But we're going to get an in-depth look at each project and sort of dissect, if you will, the elements to not just what makes these spaces look really beautiful in the photos that you're going to see today, but live really beautifully in real life. So again, thank you so much, panelists, for joining me today. Oh, I want to make one more announcement. We're going to save a moment for questions from the audience at the end of the panel, and you can submit questions to me via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So please, as we're going through, feel free to jot down a question and then send it to me via that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Okay, without further ado, we're going to start with Suzanne. Suzanne, I'm so excited that you could join us today, and I have to say, I have re-fallen in love with this project, which was featured in Veranda a few years ago, and again, a few highlights of which are featured in our new book. And I just wondered if you could sort of tell us a little bit about this project and where it is, and a little bit about the scope of your work.
Well, this project is very special. It's in Richmond, Virginia, and the house is called Canterbury, and it's a William Bottomley historic house. And it was interesting, the clients called, and what they had always seen the house, it's kind of 10 acres in a neighborhood in Richmond. Goodness. And they'd always seen this house and wanted this house, but it was not really living for today. And they have a very young family. And what they called was, how do we make this house be historic? It was interesting, the wife was English, and they have all these collections of antiques and oil paintings, but she did not want it to be so traditional. She didn't want it to be over decorated. And she had seen my work, and she wanted us to bring life to the house. And it was exciting to work with Madison Spencer, who's an architect out of Charlottesville. And we really were able to take this house and completely make it live for today. The staircase, which is so sculptural, it's interesting.
Gorgeous.
It did look like this, but the reality is it was not scaled for today's code or living. You could hardly stairs. It was, and so literally we had to take the floor plan. And one thing in working as a team in the beginning, we could kind of show how they literally could expand the entire entry stair hall, keep it sculptural, and redo the entire stairs and really make it look like it has always been there. And then we did find this beautiful antique Baccarat crystal chandelier. But in making the house not seem so traditional, one way I love to do that is to bring in color. And the main part of the house is this beautiful linen white from Benjamin Moore. And then as you saw the room before it, and the next room you'll see is this beautiful Limoges blue. And one thing that was so interesting about this room actually connects to the other room that you saw blue. And when they bought it from the other owners, they might have had a 30-foot long dining table. Like it expanded.
Oh my gosh.
And so really what we wanted to do, when you come into that circular entry, you can now look through these French doors and really almost have a secondary entry and see out this beautiful landscape and river. And we turned this table, but you can still turn the table the other way, and it can seat 28 people. I mean, when you make it long. So it was a challenge figuring out how we could make this room be two things, but an intimate, cozy dining room for 8 people, or like if they have their big family events or entertaining.
How old is the house? Do you remember when it was
built? It was built in the 1920s.
Okay.
And what we did do with the architect, we added on an addition that kind of was like, so it's very classical in its look if you look at the architecture. And the addition, when it got all finished, it really looked like it was very seamless. And it it's so great to see these buildings being restored, but we really have to bring them back to life today. I mean, all new electrical and HVAC, and literally you have to almost take it down to the bones. And we love seeing the commitment people have to restoring these beautiful properties, but then to live for a young family.
You look at a room like this though, and you think, oh, this must all be original. I mean, I think you probably in concert with the architect did such a wonderful job of, honoring its history, but yet making it livable for today.
Right. And then of course, this client had, like, the thing that they did have the most of were antique paintings.
Oh,
and
wow.
I really edit how we place them so that it didn't look over decorated. Even how we treated the window coverings, getting as much light in as possible. And just all the way we treated the metallic paint on the ceiling. I think there's a whole nuance of how to bring houses up to date, for living for today, that's also sequencing when you walk through the house. Most of the house is actually the linen white, and this particular room, that blue color, you'll kind of see coming through in the house in other areas.
Well, before we move to the living room, where again, you kind of see that thread popping back in, can you tell us a little bit about how you chose this color? And then is there something going on with the finish here how did you guys create the finish?
Well, in this room, I did do just a really high gloss finish on beautiful blue. I love this kind of gray blue. It's really reminiscent of colors you see in Europe. The house is, we really wanted this continental look. And, the blue colors that you see that are kind of a gray blue, they almost can be a neutral. And so that was we did a few samples, but it's probably one of the favorite. And also in talking to the client about what they love to live with, the blue color was really kind of, but I think what was important is doing the high gloss. It made it more fresh. It made it not so traditional. You know, we didn't do Brie painting. We just did a really glossy blue. And the ceiling is that metallic paint that's so beautiful.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And in a champagne color that kind of reflects the color of the carpet, you know, so that you bring in these colors so it's kind of still has an interesting feel. And what you really get from creating this space is when you come into the room, I always think it's all about the architecture of a space. And you see these beautiful windows and really the space, because you can't really tell it from here. It's this whole long room. It's quite striking.
It's amazing. I have to say that blue is such a kind of youthful contrast to the sort of darker oil paintings, which it really makes them, the owner's collection of paintings, stand out in a nice way.
Yes.
And of course, that chandelier is incredible, I have to say.
We love the beautiful things. I think what's interesting is how all of their, you know, we did buy some antiques, but they really want the new, like, look at the beautiful new chairs that are kind of overscaled with
the tall back on those chairs is so striking.
Well, they're so beautiful from Dennis and Lean. They're like these beautiful chairs that then they add this scale that would be kind of almost seem maybe too big, but it really scales up and creates kind of an interest in the room. I think that's the important thing when you're using and doing a historic kind of house to make it more fresh. You do have to overscale things, or using paint in some of the ways it's kind of like the lacquer.
Yeah, I love that. And I love thinking about the scale. This room is so interesting because I think, you know, you see obviously a very sophisticated use of color. It's subtle, but it's still there. So I wondered if you could talk both about the color that's happening in this room, but also about the mix of furniture styles and how, with, you know, working in a historic home, you know, there's nothing about this room that feels period per se at all. How do you kind of create that fresh mix?
Well, what I did in this room, I did everything in white. I did the ceilings and the walls, and I got the client to just agree to do all white. And it's interesting. And the carpet is, it is a reproduction of an antique rug, but it's new because the colors are really muted. And all the colors I brought into the room were platinum, like the sofa, the armless sofa, and the draperies are really a platinum color. Because what I wanted was to just, by using just, now you're coming from the beautiful white entry with a little bit of that beautiful pink velvet chair. I then wanted, you're seeing through these doors, the blue, beautiful lacquer blue room. So I have a little bit of the blue and pink mixed in to a few pieces of the upholstery. But as you can see, it was really interesting. The portrait over the my armless sofa is the portrait of the owner. Oh, and wow. we really struggle, you know, because normally we don't see portraits today that are, you know, I mean, they really are classically traditional. But hanging on the white wall and then the gilded frames and bringing in the gold, it really did. I mean, you come into this room and you really love being in this room. It's very comfortable, but it is very interesting. And it has a lot of history that's really part of their collection mixed in.
It's really quite beautiful. And I can even tell from the picture that, you know, it would feel comfortable and really nice to be there. This is such a beautiful bedroom. I have to ask you, what do you think is the most sort of essential thing when it comes to creating a bedroom that feels like such an escape like this one?
Well, again, what I think is interesting about the bedroom, it is all white. And in this room, I put white carpet, I put the white walls. You know, I started with the most clean background, again, to really focus on this architecture, because it's a challenging bedroom. And one reason you do see this in a lot of historic homes, if you'll notice on the left, the nightstand is maybe 15 inches wide.
Oh my gosh, it's petite.
And then we were able to put the wide, you know, the table on the right.
Beautiful table,
the Bunny Williams table, like, because that's really wide. And, you know, sometimes we're always looking at how you can balance this, especially architecturally. The bed kind of extends, you know, that bed wall kind of pulls out because they've done the door to the left is to their bathroom, but the right is just a recess that matches, and it captures the window. So in a way, sometimes you have these challenges, and I do think it's interesting. Sometimes architectural challenges create some of the more interesting rooms. So we ended up getting this beautiful antique piece for the to create like a bed, you know, a bed wall, because we ended up doing a bed that only had a headboard. Again, to create a sofa at the end of the bed where you could really, there's bookshelves across from the bed. And it creates a real sitting room because the room was narrow and long. And then I still love a documentary print. And by using it only on the benches and the headboard, I just think it looks very chic and not over decorated. And again, the draperies are this beautiful cream, and then that beautiful color of really Russian blue. There's some other piece of actually of Russian blue in the porcelain that's kind of in the other part of the room. So I think that it's very, you know, it's traditional, but I think kind of elegant, but also not over decorated.
Not over decorated at all. And I love the molding detail up on the wall. It's just beautiful.
Well, it was a challenge because you can start seeing the ceiling is lower and then it raises up, and then the windows. It was really, I mean, when we were working on the house with Madison, I mean, that is always the interesting challenge. And yet I do feel it, to me, having the architectural space and creating a historic home that looks very chic and it looks very young and it's really livable. It was really a special project.
It feels very livable, which is amazing. This kitchen is so beautiful. This doesn't feel like a kitchen where, you know, it's not sterile. It's not like a hardworking space, but it feels really warm and inviting. And I'm wondering if you can tell us about some of the special elements that make it feel a little more sophisticated.
Well, we use the, one thing that we decided to do was use the Calcutta Viola marble, which really is a marble that's used a lot of times in older homes. And it does have a little more pattern. It's interesting right now, we're seeing a real big focus on marble that has more pattern.
Yes.
And we had done this a number of years ago, but it does kind of look like it's a marble that was in the home, because obviously a kitchen like this is now used for the family. This does open into a family room space, but we just did the kitchens. The ceilings are not very high in this house. So we did the cabinets all the way to the ceiling, and we kept it pretty much like the classic old English kitchens, you know, with the glass doors, and they're kind of hugging the window, and yet at the same time, it again lives for today because they're of their young family and their kids. And then with the island, just everything was just really done. And it's kind of just a, you know, like a smaller space, because what you're not seeing, you're walking right through the side of this island. It's kind of the hallway to the whole house, to the back entry, and it goes to the family room, and then it goes into that area where you go to the other entry to the dining room. So the challenge here was to get enough kitchen, have it function, look like it is part of the room of the house, but at the same time, you know, be classic. And again, we painted cabinets a color that's a little bit of a, you know, kind of not gray, but just a tone down. So it wasn't, you know, just so white.
Yeah, I think that's part of what helps it feel, I don't know, like an extension of the rest of the house. I love how the cabinets wrap the corner like that. I think that I would have,
see that a lot of the English kitchens, you know, there's all these glass cabinets. We got her to do all glass, and they wrap, and you kind of have almost all the walls covered in these glass cabinets. And I do think when you can have a client that appreciates, you know, again, bringing the house to today's living, but really wanted to reference and have a house, when you come in, you really do feel like you're in this kind of special, historic kind of, they really honored the architecture of this house.
I love that. This is one of my favorite powder rooms ever. And I just, before we move on to the next project, I wondered if you could speak to all of the kind of details in this, tiny jewel box of a space that make it so special.
Well, the powder room in a house is always kind of the best place to have it be really special. And it's kind of always a surprise place. And we were able to use the Day Bernay in this powder room. I love to use the chinoiserie paper, and it's certainly in a historic house. And we had made the decision not to use it in the dining room. But by not using it in the dining room, because again, that room was, it was, you can't tell, but it was so enormous. So we said, well, why don't we use it in that same color palette in the powder room? And it really is really exquisite. And then, here we really did go all out. The client wanted, fancy drapery. It's satin and beautiful trim detail. And because it's on the front of the house, we did put one of those beautiful shades. And so we have kind of a two-part detail, but it added a chance to give even more trim and kind of we brought in the pink color and that beautiful blue color is in this paper and on the trim. And, you'll see some of that, like you went in the living room, a pillow, just a little, the chair, the entry.
The chair and the stair.
So, and this is all the Shirl Wagner, which is still, timeless and beautiful and dressy. And we just did the white Calcutta with it. It's very beautiful. And the client wanted to bring in some of the antique light fixtures in this house. And this is a place that it worked well to do that.
It's really, really pretty. Suzanne, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be in the new book. It's so exciting for me.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your work with us. So Randy, thank you as well for joining us today. And we today are going to share a project that ran a couple of years ago in Veranda and was actually featured on the cover. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about this beautiful house.
Hey, this was such an incredibly special project for me. One, because the homeowners are some of my favorite clients I had, and when they decided to embark upon building a new house, and this house is in Aspen. They have actually had a house in Aspen for 35 years, and they still have it. They gave to their kids. But the interesting thing about this one is that it's in a historic neighborhood in Aspen known as the West End. And pretty much Victorian house after Victorian house after Victorian house. And because of the strict guidelines in Aspen, you cannot tear these houses down. You have to restore them, you can add on to them, but you can't take one down. So when this interesting corner lot became available just one street over from their former house, which had a house that was actually from the 70s on it, they were actually able to tear it down, which is so rare. It was not a very great house. And then really do something unique and great from the ground up. So, we embarked upon the decision to all, engage each other and say, we really want to do something unique here that's very much into their personality, that was very respectful to the neighborhood, even though they didn't want to build a Victorian house. At the same time, not fall into that typical cliche of a Colorado mountain house.
Yeah.
Dogs and and horn chandeliers and and all those kind of things. And the wife is got this tremendous sense of style and a really keen eye. I mean, a perfect client, so to speak. And when we were, sitting down talking about it, she had a very specific color palette, and she said, "I really want something very soothing, and we want it elegant. We don't live formally, in Colorado like we do in Houston. They have an amazing house here in town that's very, very, very elegant and very, very fancy." And they said, we're short, we're in Colorado, we're in shorts, but yet we're going to entertain every single night. We're having people over. We're having people for dinner. We're having people for drinks. They've got these incredible terraces. And so, we just kind of started the project based upon, what would be the most ideal thing that we could do if we could do anything we wanted to do. And that's kind of how the whole thing kind of started, the genesis of the project.
Amazing. This living room, you mentioned this kind of in your setup about the project, but that they live casually here, yet they also have this amazing kind of elegant style. And there's something about this living room that I think is just sort of magnetic. You want to be there. And yet it obviously, you know, as you mentioned, your client has a keen sense of style. So how do you, when putting together a living room, it seems to me that the best really, you know, both draw others in and yet also reflect the personality of their owners. And how do you kind of navigate that, especially in a project like this?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about, you know, the house is the proportions of the room were so wonderful, and
Yes.
and the clients really love antiques. You know, it's a very, very important thing for her to collect. And so, you know, we started to kind of build the, you know, the scale of the room. You know, we worked with the architect. The house became the box, and you know, and then we were able to start to do the fine tuning of it. And you know, the client really wanted this fireplace. You know, this 18th century French fireplace, yeah, the house is actually more of like a Belgian farmhouse, believe it or not. It's hard to tell from photos, but from the outside, it's got that feel to it. So, you know, the room has such a big scale, and so you know, the fireplace was really the first thing that kind of went into play, and then from there, you know, we just started to build the foundation of, you know, how everything would fit into the room and how it would feel, and you know. When you're in Colorado and you are entertaining lots of people, you need a lot of places to sit. So we had enough space, and we had the ability to kind of create, you know, 2 seating areas within the room that kind of unify each other. But you know, each one has this, you know, beautiful view through those steel doors overlooking the gardens, which is really, you know, kind of amazing. The gardens of this house are really exceptional, and because it was Aspen and we didn't want it to fall into that cliche, we really had a challenge of figuring out how to make this house feel, you know, casual, but not take away the elegance that my clients really love. So, you know, one of the first things that we did find was that really beautiful Fortuny that you see on that upholstered chair.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and then kind of develop, and that pattern is so incredibly large. It's basically the repeat is so big, you have to buy 2 yards of fabric just to get the one repeat. Getting that whole thing around, and I knew that would really appeal to her sense of elegance, but yet it's just on a linen, you know, and you know, there's nothing, you know, overly, you know, fancy about it, so to speak. So we used a lot of matte colored, you know, matte finishes and matte kettle fabrics and, you know, linens and things like that. And you know, my favorite thing in that room actually is that chandelier, which I bought from my dear friend Liz O'Brien in New York, and it's 1950s Italian, but it was just so whimsical with all of those different arms, and I loved the spindleness of it. And so I thought, you know, really putting that kind of would add the whimsy that the room would, you know, eventually need to take. So that it wouldn't become, you know, there again, so incredibly, you know, wrought with, you know, with antiques and things like that, which can get a little heavy, you know, on an environment like that.
Sure. It's amazing that, you know, I'm having to remind myself that this is that your clients built this house, because it sort of looks and feels like it's been there forever, in the best way.
Yeah, we went into a great amount of detail to ensure that it did not seem like a new house, you know, down old flooring, you know, having true plaster walls done so that we could get the unevenness, the, you know, old beams, as much reclaimed, you know, things as we possibly could.
Yeah, this obviously is the dining room. And there's such, I mean, you know, last night when I was sort of preparing for this, and I spent a long time with this photograph, there's a lot happening here. It's very subtle, but there's a lot of texture. There are a lot of materials here. And I wondered if you could sort of walk us through what you all did here.
Sure. Well, one of the things that, you know, not bothered me about the house, but one of the things that I really wanted to do, and I love, you know, a really unusual shaped dining room, and this one was very much just a traditional rectangle. And so what you can't tell from the photo is that those pair of corner cabinets mirror each other also on the other side of the room. So there's a total of 4 of them. So what happens is that it becomes almost an ellipsis oval of a room, so to speak, which I thought gave texture without building it onto the wall, so to speak. And then you can also see there's an absence of moldings. up above too. So we just actually, did the little plaster relief in there so that it would, also take some of the, the traditional pretense out of, of a structure like that, and yet still make it really inviting.
Beautiful. I'm going to show everybody. There's a detail of those corner cabinets, which I think are so beautiful. Did you find those or have those made for the space?
We actually had them made from Dennis and Lean in Los Angeles, and they're such a wonderful company to work with, and we had such specifications of the size. And another kind of a strange issue is because Colorado is so dry that all that wood had to be cured for 6 months, sure that it would crack when it got to Colorado. So as a that dining table is made from 17th century chestnut boards that came out of a prairie. So the base we had done, but then the top we actually had someone here in Texas do that, actually who did the floors, do that for us. So that was pretty unique too. But same thing, it had to be like cured for a really long time to ensure that it wouldn't crack when it got there.
That's amazing. We saw this a little bit in Suzanne's project as well, but I want to be sure to point out the lighting fixtures in this room. You pick up on that color that we saw in the living room, and it's just a little hint of it, but seeing that thread, I think, really helps a house live well and flow well.
I do too. That little color was such a beautiful color. It's a little hard to tell. It looks a little red in the photo, but it's not. It's more like a raisin pink, so to speak.
Pretty.
Which was the color of the Fortuny that I fell in love with. And so that color repeats itself somewhere in the house in every single room, but in a really, really, really quiet way. My client does not particularly love strong color. And so we're able to kind of give a little nod here and there and still unify the spaces, because that room does actually fully open up into the living room as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. In the kitchen, this to me, again, yesterday when I was looking at these images again, I thought, gosh, this is one of those kitchens that you've got to believe this whole family congregates right there, and they might think they're going to have a party in the living room, but it actually, all the action ends up taking place right here. What goes into making a space, just so magnetically inviting?
Well, that kitchen, because it's actually part of the family room too. It's also one big room. I think we're going to see that photo in a minute. Yeah. See the spaces. But, the great thing about working in that kitchen is my client just did not want upper cabinets. She's not a real stuff person when it comes to things like that. And so we had the ability to put all those beautiful windows in and, cover the walls with windows, capturing the views and not having, tons of upper storage, which they didn't really need. This is kind of more of a little summer house. They don't live here full time. But we really wanted a space that they could, hang out, that they could eat, that their children would come over, that their grandchildren would come over, that their friends would sit at the bar, while food's being prepared, and, and really, just enjoy the kitchen for the way it needed to be, which was just this kind of casual, elegant space, and in the summer months when those windows are open and the breeze, it's really magical.
I do want to explore how it connects, because it connects to both this area and then this area, just to click forward, expands to yet another sitting area. And I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about how you made these, in what could be just kind of a big open space, but how you sort of carved out these more intimate and welcoming areas.
Well, one of the things, is we were able to put the beams in the kitchen, which I really loved, because, they had some form of reference and they mimicked the living room a little bit there again. But, sometimes when ceilings are too high, it takes the human scale and element out of a room. And so being able to drop the ceiling in that little family room made it seem so much more cozy and intimate. And, that fire literally going nonstop while they are home. And in the space, it's just a terrific room to be able to, sit, read, converse, do all those little things. But then in that other shot where you see, where there was like 4 chairs, as you can see from there, that are surrounding those steel doors that go out into the garden. My clients live in that space. That's their favorite space in the house if they're not outside. They sit in those chairs and they have a glass of wine. They sit in those chairs with their friends. They sit in their chair and they check email. So it's a really interesting little cozy space. Almost if you were like in the English countryside, there's a very charming quality about that room.
It's frankly dreamy. When you dropped the ceiling down, does that sort of continue all the way to this side too as well?
Yeah.
Or does it go back up?
Yes, so it drops down to, and it's deceiving because it looks lower than it is. It's still 10 feet tall, but it really has the ability to make that space really charming and intimate.
I love that. That's really a great detail worth pointing out. Wanted to also share this bedroom. I mean, there's such a kind of dreamy sense of escape and luxury here, and yet again, it's simple. But I wondered if you could just sort of share what's going on here and kind of how you put together the space.
Sure. So, there again, that's the daughter's bedroom, their eldest daughter. And in Aspen, there's a really unusual amount of square footage that you can work with. So when you reach your capacity of being able to build on ground level, that's it. There's not 1 foot more. They don't allow that. You have to go down below. So most of these homes have kind of subterranean, bedrooms because obviously it's the best use of space. So the ability that they were able to put these light wells in and capture all of that light coming from up above is a real challenge. And we play with the ceilings a little bit and do things like that. But they were really respectful of their daughters whose taste is not necessarily like her parents. She doesn't necessarily love antiques, and she likes things a little bit more clever. And so we had some fun with that, being able to really pick her brain, so to speak, of saying tell us about some of the colors that you like and some of the the charm and the whimsy and of that. So it's probably a favorite guest bedroom of all the bedrooms in that house, so to speak.
I love the extra tall lamps on the bedside tables. I love how you can see the art kind of showing behind them.
Yeah, that was pretty intentional. So we wanted to, one, raise your eye up a little bit because the ceilings are a little bit lower because it is a subterranean, level, but also play with the scale of everything in that room, from that little Swedish chair that is so, kind of funny small, to like raising up to being, so tall, but also, they kind of act like painting lights. So when the lights are on, they actually do illuminate the art. And
wow.
They'll give you a little bit more, ability to that. Because another thing too is that my clients are not real big on overhead lighting, and so as you can see, there's no cans and things like that. We had to, basically rely on that lantern, and then rely on the lamp light.
That's really pretty, and getting that light a little bit higher, I'm sure helps.
Bright a lot.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for walking us through the house. And so finally, we have Thomas, and Thomas is going to share a really special project. Thomas, are you actually here? I'm having trouble seeing you.
I'm here.
Okay, you're here. Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Thomas, this is one of my all-time favorite projects that's been published in Veranda. This house also was published in Veranda a couple of years ago, and I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about this project. I know it's near and dear to your heart as well.
So it's our library house, which is next door. It's literally the next door house and it's an all new house. For many years, the Academy House, which was an old boys' school built in the 1830s, has been my house. And then at a certain point, it's that crazy thing of like the apartment next door, the house next door. There was a 50s ranch house next door that, it's a long story how it became available, but it was available. And it started this process of thinking through what a house could be. And it was a studio and workplace and a guest house and all these kinds of things. And it grew and grew. But essentially there's a house from the front, again, that's all new and had to be based on the floor plan layout, actually, even with the walls of the original ranch house. Amazing. But it's intended to look much more like a mid-19th century house that is, authentic and appropriate for the street. And then, like many houses at the beginning of the 20th century, it's this like 1920s kind of addition that got put on it in the back. And this is the juncture. This is the side entrance where actually the Academy kitchen door and this door to the side here is a through line, and you can see from one kitchen into the other. And this sort of starts off, we'll see the tall staircase later, but this yeah, the staircase is, and the sort of white brick portion of the house starts, and then there's the big library room. But and those are some of the critters. But there's always
Hi,
but so, and this is that staircase, which actually, so the house is built as if it happened over time, and there are lots of clues and kind of things that appear as if they've changed. And part of it, you know, just about accommodating what I was thinking about the different spaces. And I love these houses that ramble and have different elements to them. And it's almost as if in this house, because this is the main stair to the second floor, it's in this place that it wouldn't have been, but other things have been changed in the house. And there's a back stair that goes down to the wine room and to the laundry and stuff that is also kind of like looks as if it's been carved out of the ground and added to the house in a certain way. But this is sort of this structure with this double height and the sort of Palladian style windows above, and that is kind of an added staircase that allowed other things to happen in the house. It also, through that doorway you see below, kind of is the way into the big library room.
It's so amazing to me that not only is this, you know, relatively newly built structure, but that it was all built and conceived and planned at the same time, because it truly feels, this picture does such a good job of illustrating it, but it does feel like this was added at some point to connect it to that other wing that was added at some point. Right. And the fact that it all kind of happened at the same time is quite stunning. I also want to call attention to the way you hung the artwork in this space, because again, this just feels like it organically grew from like one painting that was added to another painting that was added, and then there was a pedestal and a piece of, you know, ceramic pottery was added. And I'm sure that that's not exactly how that worked, but what happens with collections and how you display collections, and what do you think that adds in a space like this?
There are lots of things that I kind of carry through as things I think about. I mean, even this banister is a copy of the banister in my grandmother's house that I adored so much, and that we had a guy in New Hampshire make. I mean, there's sort of talismans and special things that I don't know, and I kind of help clients, I think, sometimes find that in their lives too. But for example, many, many years ago, I started buying these little impressionist paintings, a lot of them unframed, some of them framed. You know, they would be inexpensive little things, and then even other times I bought things that were more expensive. But there was one room in the academy that kind of had some of the impressionist paintings, but I had found all of these ones, and they were leaning on chairs and things. And I had this idea that one day, it was one of the ideas of a place, as I sort of developed the floor plans in the house and thought about this space, it was sort of this idea that like there would be a place to put all the impressionist paintings. And there's, you know, there are these small paintings, a few on this wall are bigger, and there's a few that are more dear and stuff. But it was just, I don't know, I think it's meaningful for me in a lot of the decorating and stuff that I do to sort of bring things forward, and kind of, I like collecting a great deal, and helping people find the way to put meaningful things together and find purpose for them.
I'm only advancing the slides because I think this is such a great example of that as well. And this, remind me, you've told me this before, but this is another landing. It's not the same stairwell.
So there's in the big library room, there's a studio down below, which is where my conference room is and where we work here actually in this whole COVID time. It's kind of great. And the living room is intimate, even though it's quite large, because it goes down. And at the same time, when you come at the top of the room to the kitchen, it also goes up. The room kind of goes up and down, and there's a wonderful sort of communication and flow through all of it, which is kind of actually sort of modern. But this is the balcony that overlooks the tall kitchen space. Okay. And it's kind of a different landing. And, you know, I don't know, it's just like there was this, for example, there's this painting of this sailor that I bought years ago at Arrow. And I always said, like, you know, he would make, it's sort of, you know, Deco era painting of the sailor. And there's just something about it. This is a house by the sea. And that painting, it's one of those paintings in a portrait that would like make a room. There were all these, years ago when I worked for Ralph Lauren and we would buy paintings for the stores and stuff, there were certain paintings that just had some kind of something special about them, or certain charisma that like, and that could be a portrait, it could be something else, but would be wonderful for a certain collection room or a certain staircase. And I don't know, I just always found that painting kind of handsome. And then Dan and I, in travels, in Petaluma, California, had found this needlepoint sofa, and just, it's a wonderful kind of thing. I don't know. We like protecting things, and I don't know, just bringing them forward. Or it's a wonderful thing that would have no home otherwise. And all the blue things and that beautiful sort of blue overdyed carpet and stuff just came together to make this kind of landing and that overlooks the kitchen. There were these wonderful terracotta eagles that at one point I found in auction in London, that's where they landed. And they were going to be on top of the bookcases, but they just kind of felt right there. But
I think it's so important to take a space like this that could, in a lot of places maybe be overlooked, or just, we'll put our, things here. But this, I would spend a whole day in this room. I mean, it's just lovely. But speaking of favorite rooms, this has got to be one of my all-time favorites. You've referenced this room a couple of times, but this, again, let me just restate for the audience, this is a relatively newly built room, and it feels like it's been there for 100, 200 years. It's incredible. How did you make it feel so layered and warm and inviting? And how did you take such a big space and make it feel so intimate?
It's funny. I mean, I love big rooms, big tall rooms. And again, there's that, so you can see where there's the staircase that goes down into the studio. And it was important in building this house. The studio down below is a working space, and the library is really kind of and it's a collection of books, but it's also a collection of many other things that kind of I use for a lot of the other things I design, like lighting and textiles and dinnerware and all kinds of things. But the thing is that the room is more intimate because of that opening that creates, a feeling that the studio isn't lost downstairs. Yeah. But also the room has these sort of I love English houses that have these sort of large rooms and they're furnished along the way down a long hall or whatever it might be. So there's this intimate bit in front of this fireplace. There's a wonderful desk that's right in the center of the room that actually is a very special piece of furniture. And, then there's the sort of living room proper that's to the other side of it. But
that screen, that half screen does such a good job of, I don't know, just creating all these different zones.
So I have a pair of screens that are at the Academy. There was a sale of Sister Parishes things at Sotheby's years ago, and there were wonderful objects and baskets and everything and all kinds of things. And there were these two sort of sagey green screens. One is pleated and one has the grosgrain on a diagonal sort of grid on the screen, and they were in the midst of everything, and they were tagged, and I think everybody missed them, and they were my Sister Parish screens that I bought for nothing, that I kind of made a lower version and made a screen that was sort of like the screens that Jean-Michel Franck does in his interiors around this sofa, and made this intimate spot in front of the fireplace.
I love it. I don't want to move on, but I probably should. So I'm going to show these two bedrooms, which are obviously very different from one another, but I love how this is true throughout this entire house, but I love how layered these two bedrooms are, and yet they still feel soothing. And I'm wondering, does a bedroom have to be either soothing or energizing, or can it somehow be both?
So the thing is in this house, and it may seem looking at it that, the Academy house next door is all white and bright and beachy. And this house is purposefully rich. The library room is painted Southern Vine, that deep green. We hadn't had wallpapers before in our life, and that paper is a paper that Albert Hadley used to use all the time called Shimo. And it's this charming paper. I loved it. I loved it at Brunswick for years, of these rabbits and Japanese kimonos, and there's this beautiful trim at the edge of it with this, this chinoiserie fretwork detail, and then there's this carpet with this beautiful special green color, and there's this pair of beds that I had bought years ago for a bedroom I did not have. They're so beautiful, and I buy beds for rooms I don't have, and I knew they would find a space someday, but like it's layer and layer. And at the same time, there are these Cy Twombly prints on the wall, up over the beds too. And it's all of these things, some of them modern. I mean, the table is a table that is Stanford White. It came out of the Low Library at Columbia. It was being thrown away. So just special things that I respect and all, but it's also, it's funny, this room, even the most modern people come into it. And that's my Elizabeth chandelier for visual comfort.
Beautiful.
All rock crystal and all, but people come into it and love the pattern and the sort of welcome of it. And we actually probably stay in this room more than upstairs in the master, which is we'll come to. But the master, the rooms upstairs, they were sort of it's a suite of rooms with the bathroom and the sitting room. And this is where I first used this color that I love called tissue pink.
It's so pretty.
I actually love shirts this color, this kind of dusty pale pink that go with anything, and they brighten. To me, it's like it's almost like white. And there was this carpet that I had gotten, this wonderful, wonderful special Chinese carpet that had these there's sort of like a dark cocoa chocolatey color and then this purple in them, and it's a kind of a fantastic thing, the scrolling pattern of them. And I just like the contrast of the richness of the carpet and the graphicness of it. It's kind of tough too, but the softness of the pink and the softness of this room. It's
got to be flattering.
It's just beautiful, and so.
The softness and the richness, I think, are just perfect.
I like the contrast. I like forcing these contrasts of things. I mean, I'm Gemini, yin yang, but so I like that a lot. And I think that this is like for me, this is masculine and feminine all at the same time, or soft and crisp, but whatever attributes you want to put on masculine, feminine, not even that, it's softer and it's more, obviously these, dragons are kind of aggressive and but they're just like wonderful too. And so it was the counterpoint to that, and so it's actually a really peaceful, lovely thing.
Okay, I want to make sure to hit a couple more details from your insanely beautiful house, Thomas, before getting to audience questions, which I promise we will get to because we have a lot. But can you tell us a little bit about the collection going on in here? I think this was also a clever use of space, but what's happening behind those doors?
So this is the corner of everywhere. I love designing cabinetry and millwork. It's a big part of, I design it like furniture, but in both corners of the library room, one side is china, this is the bar. And I have been collecting crystal and silver and all, for so many years of all kinds, beautiful Georgian things and other things. I have this passion about the beauty of decorative objects that are functional objects, like the absolute gorgeous quality, like things like glassware, silver, baskets and things too, but especially that like this beauty and embellishment that has been put into making things to be used.
The things we handle every day.
It's compelling to me, like the beauty that has been put into making functional objects. I love museums like the Cooper Hewitt and all, and I love the rooms in the Met that are all of the American glass and all of those things. So, and it's a wealth of things that I look at, and from it I've designed barware collections and all kinds of things. It's
I was going to say, I'm sure your own collections inspire your product design as well. I hate skipping over the garden, but I do want to get to this room, which I believe you're sitting in at the moment.
Yes. So in floor planning the house from the very beginning in the big room, so there's a portico entrance that's right here to the side. There's a screen porch and you come in, and in the corner of the room, in the corner of the house kind of pushed out, there's this room that's my office, and it has windows on all three sides, and it's under the wonderful, huge 300-year-old copper beech, and it looks to all parts of the garden.
Can anyone else imagine like a better place to work from home than that little corner? It's amazing.
It's just, I don't know. And this is the Lijofa fabric nymphaeus that at one point I recolored as part of a project where we all worked with, and it's sort of the eggplant colorway. And I've always loved the reverse print of this. And there was this this desk. Oh my gosh, this desk is this beautiful Italian 1950s desk that there was one trip Dan and I took to London, and it was when Colfax and Fowler was still on Brook Street near Claridge's, and it was in the window of Colfax and Fowler, and I just loved it. And we'd already been like bad, and I said, no, we can't buy anything else and all of this. And this is in like, I don't know, August or something. And then months later, like Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, a truck showed up at the front of the house, and Dan bought it for me.
That's amazing.
And as my Christmas present. And it's the most, I just, get lost it. But it's a, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of furniture. But it's a beautiful room in the midst of the garden. And many of the themes and notes in the whole house are about nature and natural things. And anyway,
just show this to everyone. Maybe we'll linger here while I pull up the questions from the audience. We have just a few minutes left. Hold on, let's see. Oh, give me one.
This is the LA that runs alongside the house that kind of connects everything.
Who wouldn't want to linger there? Shoot, let me see if I can figure out. I'm having trouble actually pulling the questions up. Hold on. I wonder if I need to, well, okay. For some reason, I'm having trouble pulling the actual questions up. I wonder if I stop my screen share. I'm gonna try that. And there they are. That's what I needed to do. Okay, so here we go with our audience questions. I'm gonna just take these as quickly as I can. This is for Suzanne. Suzanne, can you share, do you know the name of the blue from your dining room that we showed at the beginning, as well as the metallic paint on the ceiling? Do you happen to know names or sources?
I will look them up. I know that the ceiling color was the Benjamin Moore, and I'm not sure of the color of it because they changed their colors, and but it was a champagne color. And the blue color, I'll have to look up the exact name of that color because it may have been a custom color that we put together because I always do a number of samples. A lot of times though, I will tell you, I think it was an ICI color because I realized that ICI in Glidden was actually an English company, and they have always had the most beautiful blues, but it's really hard to find them now. They don't sell that paint as many places, but at the time, I know it was one of those colors, but I'll have to look up the actual name and I will get it to you.
Okay, great. This is a great question, especially as Circa is our sponsor today, but you each have beautiful collections for Circa. And someone is asking, do you have a go-to fixture that you like to use in projects, but also that you like to design? Even one of your own designs that you have used time and again, and that I'll toss that out to all of you.
Well, I will say, I probably think what's interesting is the Morris lantern, named after my married name. I have the original fixture in my entry foyer, and you can see it in my book. And it's the octagonal shaped fixture. And what is interesting to me, when I did my first collection with Visual Comfort, which was maybe 10 years ago, it was in my original collection.
I love that.
It did not really catch on and be as popular until maybe like 4 or 5 years later. And what has happened, what I have found about lighting, people love bringing in some of those modern elements, but that they're still kind of classic. And so even this year with Visual Comfort, they let me do like a ground, they call it a grand style, like an even larger Morris lantern, because it comes in so many finishes. It's just been very popular because lighting today, people will kind of stretch on their lighting and do things that are kind of stylish and maybe even out of their comfort zone. So all of us doing lighting design, it really has ended up being the jewelry of our designs. And we love bringing that element into, but I would say the Morris lantern, it has been really great how it translates into so many environments.
I love how lighting can bridge the gap between maybe you have a more traditional house, but you can put a slightly more modern looking fixture. Anybody else, Randy or Thomas, a favorite fixture?
Um, Probably for me, it's my Hargate table lamp, which was based on this lamp that I bought that I think was produced in France in the 80s. And I had bought it literally when I was like 19 years old. I loved the lamp so much, and I saved up for it. It was kind of expensive back then. And so I've had that same lamp forever. It's still at my house today. And when I started to do my collection for visual comfort, it was one of the first things that we ever brought to the table. And I just said, this is really something that's really meaningful. And they said, well, let's do it. And I think today it's still years later, like my top #1 selling, lamp of all times.
That's awesome. I love that.
I think having pieces that we find that are vintage, it's interesting how those have translated into some of our classics. Because
Totally.
I have, that's the same story with my lantern. It's kind of like a vintage piece, probably from the 50s, maybe.
Thomas, how about you?
I think probably there's so many, but like the Hicks light is one of my favorites, which I mean, I don't know, I loved when like J. Crew started putting them in stores, but they're in so many kitchens and stuff. But I think the Hicks light, one thing about it is it was one of the first places I started doing the bronze and brass combination, and I'm bar none, that combination in the Hicks light is probably, I think, what sells the most of that one, but or chosen the most. And it's just something that's become a real signature for me. And again, it's almost that light and dark thing that I like together. But the bronze brass combination, and which lights will do it and which ones, and sometimes I'm actually kind of trying to, develop a light based on just create that combination of bronze and brass. And because it's a real favorite of mine, and it really did start with Hicks.
I love that.
So.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in 2 more questions, one for Randy and one for Thomas. The first for you, Randy. Several people have asked about the kitchen, I believe, bar stools around the island in the Aspen house. Do you happen to recall a source, or are they custom?
We designed those ourselves and did the scrubbed finish on those and had them fabricated specifically for that project. They're pretty great. It's a wire brush finish, so that they actually take the rift oak and then they wire it so heavily that it's very textured, and then it has an English liming wax that's put into the finish. But we designed those.
They're really beautiful, and I will say, I know this has been said before, but bar stools are really beautiful. Bar stools are tough to find. Yeah,
they're tough.
So, call Randy. And then Thomas, someone asked, if for novice. This is the question for novice designers who want to create the layered look like what we showed in your house. And if the client doesn't have his or her own collections or decor, what's your advice? And how do you bring in every detail to the smallest little trinket to sort of create that layered look?
Looking for years, and one thing I would say is just always keep looking and learning, and that's one of the parts of it. But I think layers and combinations and stuff, and seeing what feels right and balanced with each other. I'm always kind of talking about this idea of what feels right, what feels peaceful, what feels kind of like the combinations feel comfortable. But at the same time, it's like it starts to be it's very much the same way Suzanne and Randy were talking about color, or the personality that is a thread that goes through something. You can also think of that in a much smaller way, a tablescape. It's like it's yes, it's the set of black stone things that you're putting together, and some of them are modern and some of them are neoclassical, or you know what I mean? It may be material, it may be color, it may be an interest you just have. It may just be things that are all about nautical things, or whatever it may be, but then there's some other thread that connects another piece to it. And, there are stories that make up a tablescape, and their visual stories that make up rooms. It's just kind of look for connections, and then almost when putting things together, see how they feel. I have this way of, when I do rooms, of Suzanne has seen me do this in showrooms and stuff, where I start putting together a room, and I walk in, I put things, and I kind of walk in and out, and I walk, kind of like doing, and I keep looking, and I keep
Yeah.
sort of like seeing how it feels again and again and again and again and again. And
Yeah.
while you're in, you know, and then at a certain point too, which is a funny one about me, even though it's done and I don't change things.
And then you leave it.
Yeah.
I do leave it. Even though I leave it, I kind of add. I have to say I add.
Oh, Tom,
Which, you know,
Steel, I do have the paint color. It
Oh,
is
you have
ice, it's ICI Glidden Limoges blue, which is one of my favorite blues. And then the ceiling color was the Ralph Lauren metallic oyster. But Ralph Lauren did discontinue their metallic paints, and I have been using the Benjamin Moore metallics now. But those are the two paint colors.
Thank you so much for taking the time to find those. It seems like, just because Thomas, you were speaking to this, but I think all three of you, obviously the projects we showed today, they're so different. And yet, to your point, Thomas, there's it's like each designer is weaving together a story somehow, whether that story is a color story or a texture story or a collections and art and antique story. And I think, to me, that's what I take away from this, that in terms of, yes, we know what makes a room look beautiful, but that's kind of what makes it feel and live beautifully as well. And I just thank you guys so much for taking the time to walk us through it.
Oh my gosh, Still, thanks for having me.
We love being here.
I'm going to try this.
Congratulations on the book.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I have to
Tom, I'm getting your new book. We're getting your new book. We're so excited.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your work with Veranda so that we have material to make new books out of. And thank you to Circa for sponsoring our conversation today. And of course, to the New York Design Center. We wish we were in New York, all of us in person, but we're so grateful that we were able to get together virtually in the meantime.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for participating.
Bye.
Bye.